Behind the Shades.
I'm Lisa Bischoff. The short version of me is, a child prodigy. I wrote my first software program in fourth grade, started college at the age of 14, went on to get my electrical engineering degree, and then my life changed. I ended up going into computer hacking and committing some pretty crazy crimes, masterminding a $600,000 jewel heist, and almost ended up with a 12-year prison sentence, but I didn't. And so I'm here today. You can find me on LinkedIn under Lisa Bischoff, or my company is fit2exist.com, FIT, the number two, XIST.com.
Perfect, perfect. So, just out of curiosity, how did you get involved in that planning of the heist, and where did it ultimately lead your life from beginning to end?
It actually started when I was younger. I actually had started hacking stuff, phone lines for radio contests at the age of 14. So I kind of always had this, I guess, I don't know if it'd be a devious deal. And then when I say I got my electrical engineering degree, I had a master key and I would hack and get my tests ahead of time. So it all kind of progressively throughout my life. The thrill of it, the need, it just increased. 2007, I was $1 million in debt. That's the first time I did something super, super big with consequences. Hacked a database, tried to buy a car with somebody else's identity. So I tried to get my life on track, but I wasn't employable. I lost all my security clearances, couldn't work as an engineer. And so over time, I still wanted to live an extravagant lifestyle. And so I racked up debt. And so that leads us to the 2019. I was $100,000 in debt, but not in my name. It was in my parents' name, and I was trying to fix it. There was a client that I worked for, and I was in a very trusted position, and I knew there was access to jewelry. I originally thought it was $200,000 in jewelry and diamonds. And so I worked on planning that. I learned behaviors and patterns and meticulously, went through till I actually did that, till I went through and stole those. That was in May of 2019. And it would be 4 months later that I would get arrested. The times I've gotten in trouble, it's been to clear up debts and not asking for help or trying to find another solution.
I know here in Canada, we had at the airport, we had a group of people steal gold bullion from the airport right off the runway. And when I think of those, when I see those stories and read about those stories, it's always intriguing to me as someone who hasn't done it, because I'm thinking, what does it take, like the mastermind of someone, right, to plan it, to execute it, and to actually go through with it? And then it reminds me of that movie, I don't know if you've seen it, Italian Job, where they're stealing the gold bars, and it kind of took you in the world of someone or a group of people that would do it. And I always found it fascinating, interesting to get into the mind of those that would have those types of thoughts, because I always say that if you're going to go home, you might as well go hard and go big, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was the times I've done it. It's an act of desperation. Like I don't see any other solution to it. And so it's kind of like, this is it. This is my only option. And I rationalize it, right? And I say rationalize, meaning I tell myself a rational lie. And that is how I'm able to push through that. And so yeah, does that answer your question on that?
It does, it does, it does. And that leads me to another question that I would have is, I know that we're talking about not letting your past determine your future. So when you look back, what's some of the progress that you have made and some of the ways that you were able to overcome your past?
Sure. So one of the biggest things, so initially in 2007, when I committed my first group of crimes and I got felony convictions in the state of Arizona and Colorado. I felt like my life, I didn't know what to do. And so it did that. Those felonies drove my life for a very long time because I'm not employable. I can't really do anything. And so my self-worth was just not the best. And it slowly started building back up. But again, I'd gone into debt. And a lot of the reason I believe that I had gone into so much debt was people pleasing. I always felt rejected. And so I wanted to fit in. And a lot of my friends, I mean, they're multimillionaires. Some of them made 40 million a year. And I wanted to hang out and do the things they were doing. And so that was part of that, it was a very unhealthy mindset to do that. And again, rationalizing accruing that debt. So after 2019, I went through quite a bit of inner healing and deliverance and renewing of my mind through a ministry in Colorado Springs. And that shifted things for me quite a bit. And that was, in to fast forward all that in 2022, the first time I actually publicly shared my story, there was a huge shift for me. A lot of things felt like they broke off because my story owned me for a long time where I wouldn't even go in public because I was so ashamed of what I'd done. I had a lot of media coverage and it's just hard. I mean, people can be people are cruel. Even people that had nothing to do with my case. I mean, even playing tennis, I have people that will not be on the court with me, even to this day. If I happen to be on the court next to them, or even in the vicinity, it's rough. It's like being back in high school and the mean girls, with the cliques, and it's kind of like wow, it's amazing. But yeah, I've gotten past that, and I just I'm to a point now where I own my story. It doesn't own me.
I love that. I love that growth because for me, I look back at some of the things that I've done in my past that maybe weren't the best, and some things that are just outright bad. And it reminds me of that quote where every saint has a past and every sinner has a future, meaning that you can do something in your past that could be egregious to maybe someone on the outside looking in, but it doesn't necessarily define who you are. It's just a part of your story, right? It could have been at 22, I decided to steal Kit Kat from the grocery store, like chocolate bars, right? But then I realized the errors of my ways, even though I was an adult, but I did what I did at that point in time. And that's a reflection of me at that age, at that point in time. But as you grow up and as you become more experienced, you begin to realize, hey, I want to take my life in a different way. And I'm glad that your past isn't your prison anymore, where there's so many of us who are still imprisoned by your past. Did you ever feel that you would completely be able to get rid of maybe some of the shackles of the accusations and maybe the looks that people will give you, similar to a Mean Girls type of environment?
Yeah, I do. It's been happening, and that hope is there. I mean, originally I was pretty hopeless and didn't see a future, and now it's like, gosh, there's so much to look forward to. And I always say, and I believe this, and I live it, is the rest of my life is the best of my life, and I am excited for what's to come. I mean, I feel like I just in the last like year and a half, 2 years, like I just started living, and there's not the I have these felonies, I can't do anything. I'm able to do things like life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, and I love it.
When you look back, how does it feel to make all these positive strides forward in your life?
Oh, I am very thankful and grateful. I have a lot of support. I have coaches and a lot of people on my team that a friend of mine did a speech on your board of directors, your personal board of directors. So who are the 5 people that speak into your life? And so I'm very intentional now with those 5 people that I want to be part of my life because early on in my early 20s, I was around some, mafia figures, con artists, and those are the those that group of people. I became the sixth, right? Those were the people that were influential in my life. And now, again, I want to make sure I have positive people, and it gives me so much to look forward to.
There's a point in my life where I began to realize that the people around me weren't positively benefiting my life. And I had some very serious and some very eye-opening conversations with myself because I had to figure out, do I want to continue doing what I'm doing, which isn't serving me anymore? Like you said, the rest of my life is going to be the best of my life. Or do I maintain the status quo and say, okay, I don't want to necessarily rock the boat, knowing that these people aren't good, knowing that I am, as you mentioned, the six in that circle of maybe people that aren't necessarily going in a direction that I want. But I found that breaking away from it was harder than having the conversation about it. What were some of the difficulties that you went through when you decided to separate yourself from these people and live the life that you're having now?
Excuse me. Originally, it was kind of, well, The separation was almost forced because of when I've gotten in trouble, right? There is a split. I mean, there was concern. I'm back in 2007. There was a little bit of fear for my life because of some of the people I was involved in. And um, now in 2019, there was that fear that came back in because there was a lot of people involved in, in that crime, and it impacted people in a negative way. Financially, some, upwards of, it was very, it was very monetary. Um, yeah, yeah, those are more like forced separations. It just kind of happens. And then I do have friends that have stuck by me. So, and those are the good friends, right? Those are the friends I've had since I was, 20 years old, 19 years old. And there's just a handful of them. And those are my people. Those are the people that showed up in the courtroom, in 2019 on my behalf. And so I'm very thankful for that. The ones that are not meant to be in my life that were not good for me, they slowly have filtered off. And so it just kind of organically happened in that way.
When you mention limiting beliefs and some of the people that you're around that were high earners, what are some of the limiting beliefs that you were experiencing in your life?
That I wasn't good enough and I had to find a way to fit in. A vow I made early on in my life that came in like the third grade when I got bumped out of an upper level reading group to a level reading group. And mind you, academics was like my whole life, right? As a child, I was praised for how intelligent I was. Um, I made a vow that I would always do whatever it takes. And so that's what happened is even though those were good people, the wealthy people, there was nothing wrong with them. I was trying to fit in and do things to fit in, and nobody knew what I was doing to actually accomplish that and hang out with them, because there was a lot. I lived a facade.
One of my friends, he experienced that, and it drove him to the point where he had to go seek therapy for it because he was comparing himself to the group around him. He was like, we're all around the same age, give or take a few years. And he felt that he wasn't able to compete with his peer group on a financial level, maybe like the job, the resources. He wanted to get married and he wasn't married at the time and he wanted to have children. He didn't have any children at the time. And it drove him to the point where each time when he would see someone, they would say, okay, Lisa has a nice necklace. Why don't I have a nice necklace? Jane has this, Johnny has that. So instead of maybe being celebratory of their successes, he was more like jealous and envious. And it got to the point where you have it, why don't I have it? And then it started to you have it, now I want what you have. Were you having similar thoughts where you were maybe comparing yourself to those around you and saying that not only do I want it, maybe I should start taking it?
Yeah, I mean that's well, racking up the credit card debt, right, in my parents' name. That was a way of taking to fulfill, trying to please, right? I mean, in 2010, I had an M5 BMW that was over 100 grand. Nobody knew about it except my friends at the country clubs. They would see me driving it. My parents, nobody else knew because I kept it at a storage facility. I would switch cars in the day to keep up this facade. Because my parents would have been just just destroyed. Knowing that, how did you get that car? And not knowing at that time, how I had acquired it. But yeah, I did a lot of things that were very damaging, to keep up the facade and to try to fit in. And again, a lot of that, I believe, all stemmed from feeling not good enough, that belief that I had to do these things for people to like me. Otherwise, I'm going to be alone.
How were you able to reconcile that with yourself? Not necessarily not caring, but about not being liked. But how were you able to resolve that for yourself so you can continue forward in your life?
So I went through a process. The ministry that I was hooked up with, back in 2019, we went through. It's like a checklist, right? And we went through all the different things that I believed about myself that were not good, right? So a lot of negative thought patterns and beliefs. And then we wrote, things that counter that. And so we wrote positive things like, I am good enough. I do belong. I will find the right people for me that love me for me. Right. And so it was going through that process, repeating those and believing them day after day to kind of reset my neural pathways. And that totally started changing my mindset in a big way.
For me, because you mentioned the ministry and the church came into my life at such an important time where I felt lost. I felt that I didn't know what I was going to do and how I was going to figure out my life. And it's because I wanted better. I just didn't know how to get better. And you mentioned these steps, and it reminds me of many of the steps that I had to undergo was understand me. What do I want?
Mhm.
What do I love? How do I want to be loved? How do I want to share that love? Can you take us through the specific steps that you were going through when you first joined and how you're continuing with that today?
Yeah. So along with as I addressed my limiting beliefs, and started getting positive beliefs, to uncover a lot of that, I went through inner healing. And I've taken that and kind of reframed it and given it frameworks to teach it to people so it's easier for people to understand. So I call it the grace process. And that's gotten to the root of a lot of my negative beliefs and just things that have happened. So like things happen to us in layers, and so it's kind of like healing in layers. So anyways, I just call that process the grace process, which G stands for you go to a memory, and now as you're in that memory, R is you release forgiveness in that memory to all that were involved. A, you acknowledge a lie, because usually there's a lie you believe, because when something happens, there's our perception or our filters that we're processing it through, right? And that's not actually always the reality of it. So A, acknowledge the lie. C, confirm the truth. Is what was the actual truth? What were the facts and what actually happened? And when you can actually apply the truth, you can experience healing. And so that's one of the ways I use that process on a daily basis at the end of each day. If there's something that happened throughout my day, I take that and it really helps me not carry the negative forward.
And you mentioned that you're sharing this with others. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have many opportunities to speak on stages and to teach, and I've got a Facebook group. And so, yeah, one of my goals is, they say hurt people hurt people. I would love it if healed people could go heal people, right? And so, one of my missions and passions is to say, hey, go spread the healing, and my healing, the way I do things, may not be a fit for somebody. So there might be something else that there might be a coach or somebody else that can help them with that. And I say, great, whoever it may be, just go get your healing and then spread that.
I'm looking at that as you have your clients here, you have the people in the audience, and to look at them and to see that they're being changed in such a positive way, to see that they're being impacted, to see maybe parts of yourself in them come out and become this beautiful person. Like, how does it feel to know that you're connecting with people on that type of level?
It is one of the greatest feelings. And like when after I went through the ministry and got a lot of my healing and everything, eventually I started, and it took like, I think another year, but I started volunteering at that ministry. And then I got put on staff there for a time. And I loved it. Like being part of other people's healing journey, it was another level of healing for me. And so anytime you get to see that, it's such a gift for me. And I mean, you see people's countenance change. And that's so rewarding. That's like one of the best gifts you can give somebody, right? Is to get to see them experience that freedom and that joy. Because so many people are missing that.
How much of yourself do you see in these people that you're working with now?
A lot, especially like my one-on-one clients. And those people, some of them have come to me through, podcasts I've been on, and they'll tell me they're like, "I want your transformation." They'll see my mugshot from 2019. In 2019, I was 225 pounds. I was physically heavy. I looked horrible. Emotionally, I was heavy. I was just carrying all that stress and that weight of my actions and everything. And then as I went through my transformation, like I said, I went through the ministry. So basically, I had a spiritual coach. After I got that freedom, I hired a life coach from Tony Robbins, and then I had my trainer. So I did like a total body, transformation. And so people will hear my story on a podcast or they'll read it in a book, and they're like, "We want what you got." And so that's those are my people that I love to work with, and they kind of will come find me and go through that whole process.
So as you're doing this work one on one, and you're doing this through everyone, what does the future look like for Lisa in regards to what you're doing?
Ideally, my passion truly is speaking, because I can. when I get to speak, I get to help a lot of people at one time, right? And so with one-on-ones, it's usually generally I'll work with a client and I'm seeing them 5 times in 1 week because we're doing fitness training, right? 3 days a week, and we're doing inner healing and life coaching the other 2 days. And so we've got 5 times a week we're seeing each other to expedite this transformation. I say I help people hack their healing. One of my gifts was I was great at hacking, but I was hacking the wrong things. And so now I want to take my abilities of problem solving and hacking and use it to help people, get through that process and change their lives. So yeah, ideally, I love speaking on platforms and teaching people. My goal is to empower people so that they can go heal.
When I look at some of the women that I work with, to help them get out of some of the trauma or their past that they're working with, they'll mention something and it'll stay with me. And it'll be like, hey,
Mhm.
I went through something similar. Then I go back to that memory. Maybe it's when I'm in my 20s, or maybe it's 5 years ago when I just started my 30s. Whatever the case is, I go back to it and I reflect and I wonder, wow, if I had someone helping me like how I'm helping people today back then, I think I would have been a more um, healed person, and my healing journey would have began sooner. Do you have those types of thoughts as well?
Oh yeah, and it's interesting though. Like for me, God tried. In college, one of my study partners, her husband, I didn't know it at the time. He's now the president of one of the biggest Christian organizations, but at that time he was vice president. She would turn Christian music on in the car when we'd be going to Starbucks in between study sessions. And I'm like, do we have to listen to that? Like, I've always had solid people in my life that tried. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and I was an altar server. I went through confirmation. I knew better. I wanted the things of the world. That was, and I was a very torn person. I basically led a double life for a good, gosh, probably from the age of 21 until 40, like, or 39, 40 years old.
For me, when I got involved in the church, I started off very young, like many of us, right? I'm pretty much sure like you, your parents take you, so on and so forth. And in my probably my early 20s, I started to do similar to this before podcast was even a thing. I used to give Bible readings and Bible talks in front of the congregation and things like that. And then I kind of fell out of it. And then I got into it again, and then I fell out of it. And then I had a similar thought that you did. I look back and I was thinking, wow, I've been given opportunity to say yes, use me to help others. And I'm doing it now by the graces of God, because God is always good all the time. And it made me think that how much further I could have been if I accepted it early on in my life. But then I look back at, maybe I wouldn't be the train I am today, who is stronger, who is more knowledgeable, to be able to take that gift and to use it fully in the world. Do you have those types of thoughts that maybe the Lisa who was ready back then wouldn't be as strong as the Lisa who's ready now?
Oh, absolutely. And like, up until 2007, at the time of my first big arrest, I would say I was not a good person. I know I made mistakes after that, but up until 2007, like I was only out for myself. I was very cutthroat, never wanted to help people. It was kind of like figure it out yourself. And um, God did a total shift in me in 2007. After that, it was kind of like I basically would have said I was on a pedestal, and God knocked me down and said, okay, I'm going to deal with you. And this is how it's going to go, since you didn't want to turn from your ways yourself. I'm thankful for everything I've gone through. The hard part for me is the pain that I've caused in all the other people that were involved in my situations. And so that's probably one of the hardest things for me, but I'm thankful. I've learned a ton. I'm able to now take that and, like I said, use it with multiple clients and really grow from it.
How have you reconciled that pain that you believe you've caused others with yourself?
Uh, I believe I've gotten to a point with the others, especially my parents, because they're ones that I've caused the most, probably too, and then the victims in my cases. And my parents have forgiven me. The victims in my cases have forgiven me, which is amazing. That was a huge deal for me. That was another big turning point in my life. The biggest thing I struggle with at times is forgiving myself. because there is still that, it's every once in a while it creeps in and it's hard. And I try not to meditate on it too much, but it is part, like sometimes there's still consequences I face from all of my actions. And so that's where sometimes they'll kind of come to try to beat me up, and I gotta get ahead of that and not and say, okay, you know what, I've dealt with it. I've repented. I've come past that, and that's my past.
As we close, Lisa, what advice do you want to give our audience before we end today?
you know, every day, like they say, every day is a gift. And I would say, look forward to your future and make the rest of your life the best of your life, because, there is so much for each and every one of us. We all have a purpose and a destiny, and, find what that is. There's the quote, and I'm not sure who it's by, but they say the two greatest days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And I truly believe that. So when you find your purpose and you get to live out that purpose and, have an impact, it's one of the most beautiful things. So I encourage people to do that.